Joining us now is Representative Mark Green, the congressman serving Tennessee's 7th District. So, Congressman, since the last time we talked, of course, that $2.3 trillion stimulus package, as we're calling it, has been passed. It's guiding a lot of the decisions that are being made right now, and there's now talk about a fourth package. But let's start about the first one. Do you think that that was enough to address the crisis at hand right now?
Well, it's really hard to know. You know, the dependence on that will be how long we're in this, safer at home situation. The longer that businesses stay, shut down, the more money, the more capital it's going to take to kick the economy back off again. This is unprecedented. I mean, we've never been through anything like this in our history. World War II, which was probably one of the biggest challenges the nation ever faced, 400,000 plus Americans died. This is doing more to the economy than World War II did. So it's hard to know. I think at least before we even entertain spending more money, though, we need to spend this money.
No, I think you're right. And that's kind of what we're seeing, too, is a lot of people, in fact, your Democratic colleagues are kind of putting together a committee to see where necessarily these funds are going. They want to have a little bit more oversight as that money goes to big corporations is really what they're taking issue with. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't think that's their intentions. I think their intentions are to find another means of poking at the Trump administration. We've got plenty of oversight opportunity in the House of Representatives right now. We have an oversight committee with multiple subcommittees. We have a special committee that was created in the legislation itself. We don't need another entity looking into this. We have plenty of those resources. This is just Nancy Pelosi digging at Trump in an election year.
Yeah, and that's what House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was saying yesterday, actually, too, that it's just there already is oversight built into that package. It's just a matter of this is what Democrats want to kind of use to kind of guide the conversation moving forward. And to your point, too, we've also heard that they're looking to open up a 9/11-style commission, as they say, to kind of look at the administration's efforts. And that's something that a lot of Americans that we're hearing from aren't necessarily on board with. They say that that's politicizing this issue in the middle of the crisis. I mean, I guess there is a conversation to be had maybe once we're out of the woods a little bit more, but right now it seems like it's a little bit preemptive. Would you agree with that decision from a lot of people that are saying that?
Absolutely. And again, we have the oversight committee that can do all of the various levels of oversight into this. Do we need to sit down and learn lessons from this and how America was postured prior to this happening? Absolutely. Do we need to look at how long we require hospitals or how much PPE we require hospitals to maintain for just such a crisis? Absolutely we do. But what we don't need is some commission during the election bashing on the president. And let's face it, that's all the Democrats have done since they've gotten, control of the House. So there's no reason to expect that some fact-finding after action review for lessons learned is what this is going to be.
And a lot of people are saying, too, that at the beginning there was a lot of just bipartisan type of decision-making. I mean, you were seeing Steve Mnuchin praising House Speaker Pelosi, who was praising Mitch McConnell. It was a very interesting time, and I think a lot of people actually liked to see that during a time of crisis. But it seems like... And it seems like more as we go on now, we are kind of getting back to politics as usual. But I do want to talk about more substantive stuff than the politicization of this issue, because a lot of politicians are saying that right now hospitals are being overrun. We look at New York, for example, where they're saying that things are getting very dire there. And you have firsthand experience with medical professionals as well. So I want to ask you, what is the situation right now regarding hospitals? Are they being overrun? Is it more so a risk of them being overrun? What is the status of where we are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. As an ER physician who, I basically founded a company and ran a company that ran emergency departments in 11 states and 52 different hospitals. So from very rural facilities to major level, 2 trauma centers. And talking to my colleagues who are still back at the company and in other emergency departments across the country, it's really dependent on location. For example, in New York, they're overwhelmed. I mean, they're seeing patients in areas that they're not, they're not set up for. They're hospitalizing people in non-hospital beds, but in other parts of the country, it's business as usual with an occasional patient. So I like the fact that the president's coronavirus task force has sort of become, we would say in the military, the tactical operations center, they're managing the battlefield, so to speak. And when one hospital needs respirators, they're sending them, but they're not overwhelming them because they're a restricted commodity, so they're holding on to X number, for the next place on the battlefield where you have to commit the reserve, to put it in Army terms. So I think I think it's being managed well, but yes, it's both ends of the extreme and everything in the middle.
And I want to ask you, too, because you're also an Army Special Operations veteran, so you have a little bit more insight, too, as to the next question I'm about to ask you. There's talks about a Navy captain right now that he has been reassigned for kind of raising the alarms on one of I believe it was the USS Theodore Roosevelt. And the Navy Secretary said today that the reason that action was taken is because he didn't just go to his superiors or his higher-ups. He actually copied it to about 30 or 40 other people, likely with the intent to kind of leak this information. Do you think that was the right step that was taken in order to kind of reassign him based on that decision?
Absolutely. The United States military has mechanisms for a commander to notify higher levels of command in order to get an action fixed. If you're copying it to tons of other people, you're trying to make a political statement, and that's unacceptable in the military, particularly when it's about readiness data. So let's say, for example, you have a company of infantrymen, which is not, anywhere close to an entire aircraft carrier. But let's, for example, say there's 100 people in this company and 30 or 40 of them are now sick. We don't necessarily want our enemies to know the readiness status of that unit is compromised. That's kind of classified information. So this guy potentially leaked the readiness status of his aircraft carrier, and now all of our foes are aware of that. I mean, that is unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable, and an investigation is warranted. If he did this for malign purposes, honestly, he should be forcibly retired or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what the Navy Secretary said is going to happen, that they're going to look a little bit more into kind of the context regarding his leaking, whether or not that he did go through the proper channels, whether or not that this did even warrant the alarms to be raised at the way that he did. But I think it's something that we're definitely going to keep an eye on, too, because you heard the president actually say that he was not on board with the decision, but he then said that he didn't have all the information yet and that it looks like maybe he is kind of a little bit more on board as this kind of develops. But Congressman, I can't thank you enough for kind of breaking this down for us, really kind of giving us the insight from different perspectives. It's really meaningful at a time like this. Thank you.
Great to be on the show. I always enjoy it.